This is WCN, the Whole Care Network. You talk, we listen. Content presented on the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent views of the Whole Care Network. Always consult your physician for medical and fitness advice, and always consult your attorney for legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Have you ever met anybody that has caregiving on their bucket list of things to do in life?
Beyond caregiving, how do we care?
We also have to care for ourselves.
How do we treat friends, family, strangers we meet?
Forget it.
How do we heal? The physical, social, financial, spiritual.
Hello.
By creating healing ties. Tying it all together like a bow tie. With your host, Christopher McClellan, the bow tie guy.
Well, greetings everyone and happy Thanksgiving and welcome to another episode of Healing Ties 2.0. I'm your host, Christopher McClellan. You just might know me as the bow tie guy. On the Whole Care Network, we are all about story sharings and resources because we believe it's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. And our common cause is supporting caregivers before, during, and after caregiving ends. And we are in the final week of recording our 30 podcast in 30 days, and it has been just a terrific experience. That means we're just about a week away from debuting our new Whole Care Network website. Well, you never know about technology, but we're planning on debuting on December 1st. But when you get a chance, you can preview the soft launch by going to our old site, wholecarenetwork.com. You'll see the link to the new site. You'll figure it out. And then when you get to the new site, you're going to meet a fellow by the name of Bo, because Bo ties things together on the Whole Care Network. You'll get it 100% when you see Bo. And during our soft launch, we're asking our listeners to provide us with feedback on the new site so we can continue to build the site where you can easily find your podcast, favorite blogs, favorite videos. Oh, and by the way, you'll be able to search content on the new Whole Care Network website via our 4 pillars of care: our physical, social, financial, and spiritual care. Goodness. And be on the lookout for our new YouTube channel featuring live shows, our streaming 24/7 radio station, and a few other exciting things happening on the new Whole Care Network in 2021. Well, enough from me. My guests for this episode of Healing Ties are the co-founders of Nourish for Caregivers, Kelly Johnson and Deb Kelsey-Davis. Nourish for Caregivers' mission is to support and empower caregivers through the gift of faith. Nourish provides tools and resources to churches and healthcare organizations to minister to family caregivers' practical, emotional, and spiritual needs, addressing the most common and challenging issues caregivers face. Nourish today is in 70 locations across the country. That is just awesome. And Deb and Kelly's mission is to see family caregivers have the resources and spiritual support they need in their very own local communities. And I can't think of 2 people more that I'd rather spend Thanksgiving morning with than Kelly and Deb. Welcome to Healing Ties. Thanks for doing this.
Well, good morning and happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Chris.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
It is. Gobble, gobble.
I was wondering who was going to do the gobble gobble first, but it is our Thanksgiving edition of Healing Ties, and we're going to get some nourishment today from the 2 of you. But I know a lot about your program, but I'd like to hear it from you. And I know it's going to be hard going back and forth with couple of guests, but I think we'll be able to balance this out pretty well. So, Kelly, I'm going to ask you to go first.
So, my caregiving story started very unexpectedly. My son, when he was 5, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And that was how one weekend we were in the forest preserve hopping on rocks. And the next weekend we were in an ambulance going from one hospital to the other.
Oh,
So he was diagnosed with a brain tumor and surgeries, chemo, radiation, and a year later. And many years later, he's a college student. So he is a happy story in all of that. But when Deb came to me about a caregiver ministry, it resonated with me because of that. So I will now pass it over to Deb and let her tell her half of the story.
So at the time, I remember clearly sitting at the lake at our family lake house, and my mother-in-law just blurted out, "I have cancer."
Oh,
And
goodness.
Yeah.
it was, you could have heard a pin drop. No one said anything. And her journey began that day. She really didn't need much support initially, but after undergoing chemo and radiation for head and neck cancer, she became very, very ill. In fact, we had to stop treatment. She went into a nursing home. And there, as myself being a clinician, a nurse, I was appalled by the kind of care she received. And we couldn't make a difference. We weren't heard. So my sister-in-law and I, both in healthcare, said, we're going to bring her home and we are going to care for her, which we did. Lots of tubes, 24/7 care. And as a nurse, I could do it all clinically. But I'll tell you one thing I could not do. I could not stand the emotional toll it was taking on me. And I became clinically depressed and spiritually depleted. And so that's really why after that caregiving experience ended and Eva passed, I learned so much from it. And I figured if I was the one out there struggling, as a nurse, there had to be more people out there struggling. So I went to Kelly, and that's really where we came together.
I just think this is such a wonderful program, and especially with the name Nourish, because caregiving it is hard. It's very rewarding, but we do need to be nourished in our caregiving, and you guys are making it happen.
And that was one of the things we had talked about early on, is that we didn't want people just to get by or to, hang on by their fingernails as they're going through this caregiving journey, is that we wanted to help people understand that there are really good there are really good aspects to this, and that there's a way to not just to get by, but actually to thrive. And so that was part of how we established Nourish, is to help people to understand, to be supportive, and also to help them see the gifts and the graces and the blessings that come in their caregiving journey.
Blessings in caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
I get that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in the middle of it, you don't really think that that's a blessing, do you?
No.
Very rarely. Although one of the things that we're starting to notice, and it could be because of where we are today, Chris, not only is it Thanksgiving, but we're going, many of us, through a Thanksgiving we've never been through before.
Exactly.
With COVID-19 and all of the different, stay-at-home orders, we're finding that caregivers, the ones that we're interacting with on a day in, day out basis, have started to recognize those blessings. There's a silver lining in this pandemic.
Exactly.
And in that silver lining, there's been a refocus on family, on being present to one another. And in doing so, many of the things, Kelly, you and I talk about with Nourish and helping people to really reestablish those relationships is one of the silver linings of the pandemic that it's brought to us.
I think another silver lining too is that aspect of faith, that people are allowing themselves to step into and lean on their faith a lot more strongly than they had prior to the pandemic, and certainly as their caregivers too.
Yeah, and I've always seen a big correlation between caregiving and ministry. Caregivers, and we've had this conversation many times before, caregivers really are servant leaders. And they're the silent leaders in most cases. And it just fits that no matter what faith background that a person would be coming from, that caregiving and ministry just goes really hand in hand.
And I'm going to key off the word hand. If your listeners are here on Thanksgiving morning with us and like me, looking at my hands and all the things I have to do today, just stop and look at your hands for 1 second. And when you do, realize all the things your hands do and that your hands are really an extension of God working through you, reaching out to others and caring for them.
That is that's beautifully said, Deb. I agree 100%. But, in the hustle and bustle of our caregiving day, we kind of forget to take that 5 minutes of reflection time just for ourselves to sit back, kick back, and give thanks.
Oh, there's many days that 5 minutes is like eternity. It seems like. Absolutely. Deb and I also, and sometimes we'll talk about taking a spa moment where you just stop, pray, and then act. And it can sometimes be as quick as that stop, pray, and then act. Or sometimes it's a little bit longer where you stop and really take some time to pray and then act. But the spa moment.
That spa moment. I love that. Because caregiving is, for a lot of intents and purposes, it's a reactionary experience. It happens on a moment's notice. You're unprepared for it. And I have to ask my pat question. Have you guys met anybody that's had caregiving on their bucket list of things to do in life? Have you met anybody that's been prepared?
Good heavens, no.
No, it just happens. It's an untimely diagnosis or an unfortunate accident, and suddenly you're thrust into this role. And and Deb, you said it so beautifully earlier. You're a nurse. You're medically trained. You get it from that side of the spectrum. But when you're doing it for a family member, somebody that you love, that emotional component kicks in, and it's hard.
It does, and before you realize it, you're already isolating yourself. At least I did. And the spiritual depletion, as Kelly was saying earlier, my prayer life suffered greatly. I just became compassion fatigued, if you will, where I actually took on some of Eva, my mother-in-law's suffering. It was impacting me in ways I'd never imagined.
Boy, could we do a whole show on compassion fatigue?
Yeah.
I think we're going to put that on the back burner there. Yeah. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Kelly.
No, not at all. I was just going to say, and so often we just sort of kind of tumble into it. It starts out maybe just running errands for our parent or picking up the prescriptions, and then it just keeps compounding, and we're slowly pushing other things in our lives off to the side as we're taking on more and more of the caregiving role, and we don't realize how fatigued we are getting because it's just been this gradual building up as opposed to a big wham. And so many other things get pushed to the side.
And asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
Asking for help is something, though, that I think every caregiver struggles with.
Yes.
And receiving help. When it's offered, how many times does a caregiver say, "Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm
fine. I can do it. My caregiving cape can do everything."
Well, we feel like we have to be strong for our loved ones, so we can't take on asking for help or receiving the help because we have to be strong. We're the strong one in this situation, so it is.
And I think it often goes unsaid that the person that you're caring for, whether it's a loved one or your care partner, however you want to describe that person that you're caring for, they understand that you're working in stress. It may not be said, it may not be articulated, but they understand, and they want you to take better care of yourself.
So I have to share, I'm currently caring for my 94-year-old, soon to be 95-year-old father, and he knows, he can tell, and he will actually tell me I need to go to bed. I'm like,
kind of like bringing back old times from childhood.
I was going to say nothing like that.
Dad, you need to go to
bed.
He does. He said, "You look tired. You need to go to bed." Because we use technology. We use a portal, much like a FaceTime, where we are able to see each other, talk to each other a couple times every day because I live about 3 hours away from them.
Oh, so you got a long distance caregiving involved in this as well.
Yeah, I go there every other week, spend a few days. But when I'm not there, yes, from a distance.
From a distance. So, as I mentioned in my opening, you have Nourish in 70 different locations. Tell us about that.
So as we started out saying, Deb and I connected and we did a workshop on caregiving and realized it needed to be an ongoing ministry. And so I figured I could order something, only to find out that there wasn't that something that included that spiritual component. And we've talked about how important that is. So Deb and I kind of looked at each other and said, well, let's give it a try. So we created it here. After a couple of months, we realized, well, maybe other people might want this too. So we took a look at what would it take to reproduce it so that others could have this ministry. And that's where we've kind of grown since then, is continued to share it out and recognizing that caregivers need support and they need that physical, emotional, and spiritual support.
And it fits exactly with the concept of what we're all trying to do to help nourish caregivers. But there's also another important part of your work that the two of you have developed, which I think is just terrific, is your book.
Yes, our book, The Caregiver's Companion. And it truly is a labor of love. Kelly and I never imagined that we would be writing a book. One of the things that I would say is that we took our own experiences and we truly looked to carry through that faith-filled element, the spiritual element, because, you can feel alone because, frankly, you may very well be alone in your caregiving. But to know that you're a loved child of God, to know that you always can count on that spiritual support is huge.
And the other part of it, the other part of it is that it's a journal. So it's set up to allow people that time to reflect, do that spa moment, that stopping and pausing and praying.
I just love that.
And acting.
Yeah. Spa moment.
Yes. And so it moves people through, and it's set up with the chapters are on different aspects that pertain to caregiving. So it gives people a time to move through those from a faith perspective, as well as looking at the journaling, which, I can't speak enough about journaling because I think it really just helps us to open up understanding, taking a different look at all the different angles of an issue that we may be facing. It lets us experience and move through and process some of the different things that were going on. And then there's all sorts of, it reduces stress and helps you sleep better and all those great things. So can't say enough about journaling. Start journaling.
And I'm going to add another important component of it. I found my relief in blogging when I started the Purple Jacket in 2011. I still can't get into the Purple Jacket, but we're still trying. But that's for another conversation. But after caregiving ends, and you have this plethora of content that you can go back and review, and it refreshes your memory about the experience. And not only does that help you, it helps so many people that will be caregivers. Because one of the things you realize that when you go back and you look at your journal or your blog or your notes or however you do it, not only is it cathartic, but it demonstrates to you, it reminds you that the good days far outweighed the bad days. Yeah. It's just those bad days were so intense and they're so yucky. But in the end, when you can look back and you have documents of this, you're like, oh my God, what a joyful experience this is.
Yeah. And I have to say, too, the Caregiver Companion through Ave Maria Press, the team at Ave Maria Press put together this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous book. And so, as you say, you get to look back on it. It's a keepsake. It's truly a keepsake. And it's something that you'll look back on time and time again.
Well, and I would add, too, that you create this memory bank as part of the book. But if you're like me, many of us go through not just one round of caregiving, but two or three. And my caregiving experience the second time around is very different because of having some of these reflection moments, which is why we built this into the journal.
Oh, you guys are doing such great work. It's a pleasure to be connected with you and have you and friends. And of course, I'm going to put you on the spot and say you need a podcast on the Whole Care Network, but we'll talk about that soon. But I think this is our perfect time for us to take our break, Deb and Kelly. Now, this is the time where I come back from the break and I put you two on the spot. We want to know one fun fact about each of you that I may not know and our guests are just dying to hear. So put your thinking caps on and we come back. We'll be putting you on the spot, okay? You're listening to Healing Ties on the Whole Care Network. We'll be right back.
Tomorrow on Healing Ties 2.0.
What I've found in the ideal caregiving experience, it's really a care partnership where the caregiver is providing care, but also the care recipient is able to give back in some special way. Even if they can't verbalize it, even if they do have a memory impairment and can't even remember who that is, it's up for that caregiver to be open to whatever way that care recipient is going to communicate with them. And it also brings into light the idea that as caregivers, we really need to listen to communication coming from our loved one. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. My name is Matt Estrad. I'm the author of The Peace with Dementia Rosary, Education, Intentions, and Community. And I invite you to join me and Chris McClellan on the next episode of Healing Ties, where I'm going to talk about my dementia ministry. It's a book, it's a website, it's education every day, every week, every month. And I hope that you'll join us to hear about that and other ways that we're reaching out to families who are impacted by Alzheimer's and other types of dementia.
Join us tomorrow and every day in November for 30 shows in 30 days. Healing Ties 2.0. Available at thewholecarenetwork.com/healing ties and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And again, happy Thanksgiving. I'm having my delightful Thanksgiving conversation with Deb and Kelly from Nourish for Caregivers. And I hate to put people on the spot on Thanksgiving, but maybe they got a funny Thanksgiving story they want to share. I don't know, but it's time to put you two on the spot. I want to know one fun fact about each of you.
Well, to stick with the Thanksgiving theme, I will go with the fun fact that I really don't particularly care for pumpkin pie. Sorry, I don't.
Oh my God.
I know. We're having it, but I don't particularly care for it.
So what's your
No.
pie of choice?
I would go for a fruit pie, like a cherry or something. And
Like
it's
a
not really
cherry.
cherry season, but something like that. Yeah.
How about pecan? Can we get at least close to?
No.
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 Okay. Well,
Sorry.
that's a fun fact. Okay.
That's my fun fact.
We had somebody that didn't like peanut butter a couple of weeks ago.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't eat peanut butter for a long time because that was like what I subsisted on in college. So I was off it, but I don't know that I couldn't not eat.
Okay, Deb. Now it's your turn.
Well, fun fact on Thanksgiving is that we do something very untraditional. We have sauerkraut.
Oh,
And
Oh.
the reason why is as a child growing up, one of the things we used to do with my grandmother is we'd make homemade sauerkraut in her basement. And let me tell you, it was messy and stinky.
I had that vision in my head. That had to be messy and stinky, but it sure turned out really nice.
Oh, it is to die for. I wish I had some of that homemade sauerkraut. So in honor of her and all the wonderful memories every Thanksgiving with her, we have sauerkraut.
So let's make a pact here. So next year, we won't do it on Thanksgiving, but I'll come up to Chicago, or you guys can come to Florida or Spain, wherever I might be. But and I'll make a cherry pie for Deb, and then for Kelly, and then Deb, you're going to have to teach me how to make sauerkraut.
Oh, I'd love to.
That would be fun.
that would be a lot of fun. I don't know if I want to eat them together, but that would be a lot of fun.
No, there had to be some time separation. I don't think they blend well in the same meal, but it would be a lot of fun.
Yes.
Well, imagine for all the caregivers out there listening right now, it doesn't matter what you're eating today on Thanksgiving. It's that you're together, and it's the love, and it's the food that communicates our passion sometimes.
Exactly. And we can call all your participants in Nourish on the house calls and say, we're making cherry pie and sauerkraut.
Exactly. Pull them in.
Pull them in. So tell us about the house calls.
So house calls early on in the pandemic, when we realized that our groups could not be getting together in person, we thought about how do we still provide support to caregivers? So we started a daily house calls where caregivers from across the country can call in and connect together with other caregivers. And it is centered on scripture and time of sharing as a way to begin kind of that opportunity for caregivers to share and support each other and just sort of kind of journey together.
What a great idea
together.
to be able to find that enrichment and comfort through those calls. And you also have a wisdom series that goes on every other Wednesday.
We do. And actually, I believe, Chris, we had you on there.
I think there might have been a sighting, yes. And it's still up on your website last I checked, so I guess I did okay.
You did excellent. And so what the wisdom series is, it was a means to say, look, there are so many people out there who've been or are currently caregiving that bring a lot of personal experience as well as professional experience, who've really made it their life to care for caregivers and bring programs and services. So that's what we do. We have twice a month, we bring an expert like you, Chris, to the wisdom series where people can come in for free on Zoom and learn and also be emotionally and spiritually nourished.
And I had a great time. And I will say that all caregivers are experts.
Absolutely.
They're all experts in their own story. And the more that you share, the more that you give and receive. So goodness, we've just, I hate to end these shows, but we just have a couple of minutes left. Let our listeners know how they can access all the wonderful information and content at Nourish for Caregivers.
And all of that is available on our website, www.nourishforcaregivers.com. And also, Deb, if you want to speak to the social media side of things.
Oh, the social media site. Yes. Yeah. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and it's just Nourish for Caregivers community. And we also have a private forum as well. And, we just invite everyone to, especially on this day of Thanksgiving, to take a moment and be grateful for all the things that we have in our life.
And I'm grateful to have the two of you as friends. And, Deb and Kelly, with the stories you share and the work you do, you are certainly two people who are creating healing ties all around us. I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Chris. We're grateful.
Thank you, Chris. Very grateful. Thank you.
Well, that does it for this episode of Healing Ties, a Thanksgiving episode of Healing Ties. As you know, I'm your host, Christopher McClellan. You might know me as the Bowtie Guy. I've created a life to love after caregiving ends by sharing stories, resources, and being with awesome people like Deb Kelsey-Davis and Kelly Johnson. Healing Ties is produced in the posh studios of Oddbach Production in downtown St. Louis, Missouri, and is part of the Whole Care Network. Check out the soft launch of our new Whole Care Network website where you'll meet Bo. You're going to love Bo. At least I hope so. And be sure to subscribe to Healing Ties wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We'll see you for another episode of Healing Ties, tomorrow, as we continue our 30 podcasts in 30 days to celebrate National Family Caregivers Month. Thanks for listening. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye for now.
Happy Thanksgiving.
This is WCN, the Whole Care Network. You talk, we listen.